Okay, so this one will actually be a bit different. We're going to go ahead and take the time to look at the four newest units in the game, the two Android 13s and the Cell and the Tien. They're upcoming or they're coming soon. I don't know when they're coming. I think they said on the 18th, so another day or two, whatever. Regardless, we're going to look at those guys and we're going to try to discern whether or not they fit on their mono teams respectively. So I hope you guys enjoyed today's video. Subscribe if you're new, and we'll go ahead and take a look at it. And as always, well, I guess for today's video specifically, or most of the time, I guess, I am using the Dokkan wiki mainly because of the overlay. You know, it's just a little bit more video friendly. I don't have anything against DBZ Let's Space. I want to preference that because sometimes I get questions about that. But regardless, while I take off my wristband here, because it's kind of getting annoying, but we're going to look at Android 13, the intelligence. So if you guys have been around for a while, right, Android 13 intelligence has just been one of my favorite intelligence units, basically one of my favorite units for a very long time because of the passive, changing TEQ to rainbow. So if you're a newer subscriber, you haven't heard me talk about this in a long time, but the ability to change a color to a rainbow basically sets up orb combinations for those characters with those nuker type passives, like Buhan, like basically all the intelligence hard hitters have nuke passives. The Rage Trunks, who obviously he's a little different because he needs intelligence orbs specifically, but the guys that can get any kind of orb, like Buhan, like LR Gohan, those guys like that love and really appreciate a unit like Android 13 that can set up these orbs. Because say for example, you've got a whole bunch of reds in one area, but there's greens cutting them off, and you need a rainbow to get to the other reds on the other side. He'll come in and change those greens to rainbows, and then you can connect the rest of the orbs. So it sets up orb paths. So basically, he doesn't really do much else. I don't recall if he lowered defense before, but it doesn't really matter if he did, because that's really insignificant. I came to the realization earlier that unless it's against Broly, lowering defense just is not useful, like, at all. It doesn't really do much. The only real caveat to lowering defense is that it kind of screws over units like Cooler, you know, the physical Cooler, like Super Saiyan 4 Goku and Vegeta, that the guys that get those high defensive stats, because the enemy, the boss that you're fighting, can greatly lower your defense. They can do that. So if you're fighting a boss like that, basically those guys that get really high defensive stats, they lose their ability to tank. You know, not to say they can't tank anymore, but they lose a significant chunk of that. So that's the only real value that defense has in this game at this point. So, you know, looking at his links, he has Red Ribbon Army, Android Assault, Tough as Nails, Metamorphosis, Nightmare, Fear and Faith, and Shattering the Limit. So the first few are just, they're gone. We don't care about them. The last four are the ones that matter, basically. So Metamorphosis is really good for the healing ability. There's a lot of healing already on Extreme Intelligence, but, I mean, it doesn't really matter at this point. But Nightmare, Fear and Faith, and Shattering the Limit. So basically, with this 50% increase, which is honestly the only real change aside from Shattering the Limit, and I believe his stats are relatively the same. Basically, with this, you have a unit who is a support unit at nature, or in nature, but he's able to hit relatively hard. He'll probably hit for a couple 100,000, so that's pretty good on a Kid Buu lead, and I would say that he could fit on that team. I have to take another look at that team specifically to say whether or not he fits in an optimal scenario, but definitely I would personally run him on there because of the issues with Kid Buu himself. This is a really good scenario for a unit like this because Kid Buu himself just simply doesn't have good key links, so he can kind of simulate a key battery for Kid Buu and allow Kid Buu to get off some good super attacks. So if you don't have a unit that just naturally gives key, like a Turles or like a Rebirth, you need the Battlefield, which, by the way, Battlefield's back. I don't think I'm going to play it on my channel, though, because I don't too much care for Battlefield videos specifically. But, you know, the Rebirth meta Cooler who gives key by the passive and stuff like that. If you don't have something like that, by all means, run Fusion Android 13 Hateful Light. So let's go ahead and take a look at the TEQ version. So the TEQ version is a free unit, actually. He comes from the game story mode. I will say that it's not a pleasant grind. It is not a pleasant grind. It takes a long time, but he was kind of worth it around the time that the story events came out, you know, when he was pretty new. He was totally worth it, and then he kind of fell off and stopped being something that people even cared about. Like, you know, people don't even have the TEQ Android 13 in their boxes at all. Like, people send me their boxes to try to help them make teams sometimes, and I'm like, you don't even have that card. So that just kind of goes to show what happened to him. He lowers defense. He has Supreme damage now, whereas before I think he had Extreme. By the way, if the other Android had Supreme too, he had Extreme before, I'm pretty sure. But what he does now is he's very self-sufficient. He Android's 14 to 15's combat data. That's pretty cool. Basically, he's self-sufficient. 4 key and 70% up when he gets to 8 or more key. That's basically every single time because he's going to start off with 6 key on an Extreme TEQ team whenever that drops. So, I mean, get him 2 orbs, any color, 1 green orb or 2 rainbow, whatever, he's going to get this. So he's basically going to be a hard-hitting unit. He has Nightmare, which is a 10% link. He has Fear and Faith, which is 2 key. That, in and of itself, puts him at 8, or Rebirth if he's using that. Basically, exact same scenario as the other guy. Mono Tech, Extreme Tech will be a little bit different because we don't know how they're going to function because we don't have their leader yet. But I will say that the other one has more staying power than this one. This one's just a generic hard hitter, although he does have the self-sufficiency with the 4 key and a pretty solid key link here that'll probably stretch across the board with Fear and Faith. You know, he's a good option if you don't have another hard hitter like somebody along the lines of a Merge Zamasu or whatever else, you know, Tech Cell, whatever. We don't know. I'll talk about that in a minute. He's a good option in that scenario. Otherwise, he's probably forgettable. Same scenario as before. He doesn't get a whole lot better for what he would be used for. He gets a lot better just on a face value level, just not for what he would be used for, because Extreme Tech basically is littered with these kind of guys. And just Extreme Tech is a lot like Super Tech in that they just don't need another hard hitter. So there's that. So let's go ahead and take a look at the Tien and the Cell, second form Cell. So supreme damage and lowers attack. This is great. This is great. This is great. I'll forever just highlight this. This is great. This is great. This is great. More hero cards that lower attack. Please. I love that Bandai is doing that. That is phenomenal. As opposed to little stupid gimmicks like the physical Gohan that gives 3 key and 40% that came out with a physical Super Boo. You know, he gets a little stun chance. Like, why? That's so irrelevant. Because he's doing the Ki-Ho, and I understand that. It's just like a rare stun chance is not even usable most of the time. So lowering attack, albeit it's not great, has usage, which is why I love Gogeta. Intelligence Gogeta got that same mechanic, and mainly Heroes cards just didn't get stuff like that. They would get a stun, but that's about it. But most of that stuff is on villains because villains are known for gimmicks. So 3 key and 40% up. Mainly has Over and Flash, probably because of the fact that he was about to freaking pass out when he was doing this against Cell. But mainly the real reason why he has it, and you've heard it here first, of course, you probably noticed, is because that's basically their main key link on that team. That's just what it is. So whether you like it or not, he has it, and he has pretty good stats too. He's exclusive to that. He is a farmable super attack via the AGL one if you want to do that. He does have Supreme, so with the 40% attack and defense buff, don't forget that goes to himself. That means he innately starts off with 9 key. If he's on a rotation with a Gotenks or a Goku, he will start off with 12 key because Over in a Flash, instant super attacks. He'll also get 40% up. Supreme damage lowers the enemy's attack. Overall, not much to say. Tien is an optimal tech unit. Regardless of scenario, Tien fits on the team. It's just kind of looking at it, though. It's like, who would you drop? Do you drop Tech Vegito? Do you drop LR Goku or Bardock? Because previously, speaking on optimal team, you had everything available, right? I always say, because sometimes people get mad at me, and I understand the mindset, depends on what you have in your individual box. I can only speak from a scenario that talks about everybody playing the game. So bear with me a little bit. But generally, you would have Super Saiyan 3 Goku, you'd have Super Saiyan 3 Gotenks, you'd have LR Goku, you'd have Bardock, and then the last 2 slots are up for interpretation. You could have somebody like the Dragon Ball Super Trunks or the adult Gotenks. If you have him, he's really old. He's unavailable right now. Or you would have Tech Vegito, whatever you had, or Tech Pikkon or Whis, those things. So you can form a very, very thick defensive type of tech team now because he lowers attack and he supplies them with key. You have Pikkon there who just got Fierce Battle, which allows him to output a little bit more, not anything crazy, but he's still self-sufficient. You have Whis who got a better passive that allows him to debuff the enemy's attack, and then you have a sealer, one of the best sealers, if not the best sealer in the game, in Bardock, and you could drop Goku, or not Goku, excuse me, you need Goku, but you could drop Gotenks for LR Goku to be that guy that gets the high defensive stat that benefits the most from the attack reduction. So you can start to formulate some really good tech teams mainly because of Tien's versatility. And even if you're not running a team like that, you're just running a very offensive-based team, he still lowers attack, which is still going to give you a little bit of defensive viability along with the LR Goku, so that's great. But the main issue with him is that he's going to force Gotenks to 12 key, like always, every time he runs on rotation with Gotenks. It doesn't truly matter, though. It doesn't matter because 12 key Gotenks is still going to hit for a lot of damage with this 40% buff. 40% is super, 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 super significant. That is a very big buff. Let's go ahead and take a look at the Cell. So, supreme damage and greatly lowers defense. whatever. These guys are kind of like demis, you know, the demigods, because they're giving the respective type that big of a buff. That's pretty cool. So 3 key, 40%. Messenger from the future. Big bad bosses. That's great. Attack of the clones. The wall standing tall, which is it's okay, whatever. Nightmare and Brutal Beat now, which is another whatever kind of link. So he can be used to farm. This is not even farmable, so I don't know why it's there, but whatever. Anyways, same scenario. Starts off at 9 key. Doesn't have the best links. Tien definitely fits better simply because he has Over and a Flash. But Big Bad Boss is a really, really, really good link for him, along with Nightmare. That is going to allow his allies to get a significant chunk of attacks simply from this guy being on rotation, or just popping up on the map, because they'll get that. Big Bad Bosses will be triggered. They'll get Big Bad Bosses 25% or so. Nightmare's 10%. It's overall, he's going to be, these guys, all these guys like this, if you haven't understood, 3 key and 40% is too big of a buff. They're the best support units in the game. They are going to be on all their teams. So I have something a little special now. We're going to go ahead and basically clean up a mess. We have a really, really cluttered list of options for mono text. Let's go ahead and take a look at it here. And I'm going to try to, I've done this before and you guys liked it last time. I'm going to try to break it down and formulate a team. So for all intents and purposes, I'm going to put Bayteen there. She's going to be my proxy, what's his face? Tech Cell, second form cell, the one we were just looking at. So she's going to basically be him. So she's going to be on the team. So there's that. Everybody else over here. So I need a proxy leader. We'll make the proxy leader, I'm sorry if this is kind of hard to follow. We'll make Tao the proxy leader, and we'll function on the assumption that the leader has Nightmare, Fear and Faith, Big Bad Bosses, and Shocking Speed, because that's what I assume that the leader will have. That's just kind of general. So what do we have left here? We have a lot of units that function really well on a team like that, but what you would probably want to do, right? What you'd probably want to do to make this work the best is have another guy that supports and adds attack and defense. If you're not familiar with it, this guy here, to capture by an enemy. What? That's like totally not the right passive, is it? 30%. Yeah, this is showing me first form cell. Why? Why are you showing me that first form cell down here? I don't want to see him. I want to see you. Show me him. Well, either way, King Piccolo gives attack and defense. Let's go ahead and look it up. King Piccolo, Dokkan Wiki. Yeah, so I'm pretty sure it's an attack, defense, and key to extreme types, which the whole team's extreme anyway. Yeah, so where's the rebirth? Boom, boom. Yep. No defense, just 25% attack still. 3 key. That's great. So you have those three. You have the leader, you have the tech cell, and you have the King Piccolo there. So what do you want to fill out the rest of the team? Well, let's go ahead and look at some defense and offense blends here. Obviously, depends on your options. Said that earlier. I'm not going to go on that spiel again. That's all you truly need at that point, because assuming that the leader is kind of like the other guys, he's going to hit really hard. He may also have some sort of defensive gimmick like most of them do aside from Goku. Even Gogeta kind of has a defensive gimmick because he lowers attack. But what do we want from here? You'd want Murdzamasu. Probably going to pop back into being one of the top 10 hitters or something in that area again. He was that before. Probably pop back in there again. So aside from that, we have a few options, right? You have a guy that could or could not be on the team. Let's go ahead and actually eliminate some of these guys before we talk about that. You're not going to be on the team. You're really good, but with... I'm talking about 17 here, but with these key units, we don't need his orb changing. So he's not going to be useful there. Although he would be useful if you run him with Tech Cell, which may or may not be a thing. We'll talk about that. But you're not going to make it. You're not going to make it. You're not going to make it. You're my leader. You're my proxy. Cooler's actually a really plausible case. So we've kind of narrowed it down a lot. So, okay. I'm going to actually put him back in there because he does have practical use here. So, basically, we've got these guys. We've got the leader. We have Tech Cell, second form. We have Murdzamasu, and we have King Piccolo. So links don't particularly matter so much when you run supporting units like that, attack and key. So what would you want from here? I'm going to go ahead and say that Tech Frieza would be really good, but he's probably going to be redundant, assuming that the leader is able to tank. So I'm going to actually eliminate Tech Cell, or Tech Frieza, excuse me. Very good unit, but he's going to get eliminated. So Bardock, I was going to talk about Bardock a little bit. But Bardock is a guy that could or could not make the team. It depends on the leader, because I don't want to give him too much flack, because you would have key supporters here to kind of help him out. It's just Bardock in and of himself, Mass Saiyan, doesn't have very good links. I mean, he has to prepare for battle and fierce battle. Those are like the only good links he has at all. So that kind of puts a little bit more pressure on you, making sure that you've got one of those two supporter guys at all times, which obviously you cannot do, because there's 3 turns basically. So you're going to be missing on 1 turn. Every few turns you get Bardock, he won't get that buff. So I don't know. It kind of comes down to whether or not you want to take that, or would you want a little bit more consistency. For me personally, I'm going to say I want the consistency, so I'm going to kick Bardock off of the team. So here we have a different scenario. For this, I'm going to add Frieza back in. And by the way, Nova Shenron's actually a really good candidate for like this shocking speed build, but I'm not going to really add him back in for the purpose of the video. Very good candidate though, because he hits really hard and he's self-sufficient. But you can either do top 2 or bottom 2. What do you think would basically give you more output? So Cooler gets 90% up, has Fierce Battle. You get attack and defensive increases, Frieza, but you're percentage based and your percentage reduction. So that's the good thing. That's the big thing. So when you come down here, this guy has all of the tangible villain links. Super 17 has all the tangible villain links. He even has big bad bosses where his AGL counterpart does not have that. So he has all of the big time villain links. So he'd be very good on that team. He also would set up some orbs. He gets a very minor attack increase, so he's not going to give you any offense himself. But what he would do is you keep him on rotation with a guy like, I wouldn't keep him on rotation, because if you're running Cell, you'd probably want to keep him with the second form Cell. That'll probably be like his best friend. But Cell is different because he really wants those orbs. So you can keep these guys and you can float this guy, whatever it is, or keep him on rotation. And you could do something like that, and then all of a sudden you have a really good offensive and defensive blend, assuming once again that the leader is able to do both of those things like most of the leaders can nowadays. Otherwise, once again, if you want more consistency, the top 2 is a safer avenue. We're going to go ahead and click that off. The top 2 is a safer avenue because of the consistency factor. So you have 6 units here. These 4, the tech, second form Cell, and the leader. And then all of a sudden you have a really, really good blend of offense and defense. And that's truly what it comes down to. But more or less, it comes down to your playstyle, right? Depending on what you want to play with. There's a lot of options in here. Like, they have some recovery units. They have, like, this guy right here. He's recovering. This guy can recover too, I believe. They have a lot of stuff like that. They have stunners. They have everything that you would ever want. Just comes down to your playstyle. So, for me personally, I'd probably run something like that, or swap 2 of those guys out for these guys down here. But Frieza's a better tank than Cell, even though Cell can get a horde of high defense. I talked about it earlier in the video. It's more reliable, even though Frieza has the really bad 50% reduction, or 50% stipulation on the passive. It's more reliable to have a guy that does damage reduction versus increasing their own defense to basically simulate tanking those attacks. That's basically what it is. So that's why Vegito, Super Vegito, AGL, has been so timeless and so good. So anyways, that's it. We cleaned it up. So anyways, hope you guys enjoyed it. Hope you guys learned something. Subscribe if you're new, and I'll catch you guys in the next video. Have an awesome day. Peace out.